looking at stencil making and how to use stencils. How to create them using only scissors. So we're going to be looking at positive and negative stencils. For example, this heart is created by cutting out a heart out of card, placing it and using the paint around. Whereas this pattern was created using this stencil. Here I've assembled lots of different pieces of card together to create a stencil, placed them over the top, and the paint has gone through the gaps. So there's two different types of stenciling. For this you're going to need cardboard, some paper, some sellotape or glue, paintbrushes or a sponge, some paints, a pen, a ruler and some scissors. Let's make a start. The first one we're going to look at is creating our own simple stencils to paint through using geometric patterns. So for this I'm going to start off with a piece of card. So the first thing we need to do when creating our stencil is to make a frame. So here I'm just going to make a frame out of card. I'm going to start off by sketching it first so that it's even. So I'll do a 1 centimetre frame. Doesn't matter if your stencil gets a bit messy because it's going to get covered in paint in the end anyway. So don't need to be too worried about getting paint or other kinds of mess on there. Hope you've all been getting plenty of chance to be creative recently. If you do create anything great, it'd be wonderful to see what you've done. So don't forget to share it with Cartwheel Arts. Right, so just cutting out here a very simple frame. So here we've got a very simple rectangular frame to start us out. The next thing we want to do is create our pattern within the frame. So for this, for the original piece, what I did was actually just use strips of paper. But for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use geometric shapes as well. So to create these geometric shapes, all you need is a piece of cardboard that you've got lying around. You want to fold it in half and then cut out a triangular shape. So we've got something like this. When it folds out, you've got your diamond. Then you want to cut out a smaller triangle from within. You could go for something like circles instead, curves, wavy lines, zigzags, anything you like. If you wanted to, you could create something like the pattern of leaves. You could actually have stems going up and different leaves coming off to create a more natural image. But for this one, I'm just creating a pattern. This is a pattern that could be repeated again and again. So I'll start placing some of these geometric shapes onto my frame to see what they look like. So there we go, there's the start of my geometric piece. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start placing some pieces in between. But first what we need to do is we need to tape them down. So you can use glue. I find tape just works so much better. Hold it in place and you don't end up with pieces flying everywhere. So just tape this one. We'll tape the top one. And we can start taping the ones in between. What you want to make sure of though is that you remove any excess tape. So you can see here that I've got tape that goes into the stencil. What I need to do is I need to fold this down and press it so that I remove any excess areas. Otherwise those will show up in your design. You don't want the tape showing up in your design. There we go, just remove that bit. And some bits you can just fold over. So for instance, this bit here, I can just fold that one over. And the same with this bit here. If you want some inspiration, try having a look online. There's lots of different inspiration out there for different geometric stencils. There we go. So, there's the basic form for the stencil. Now what I need to do is I need to remove any overlapping outside bits. I need to secure the last bits down. So here we'll just secure these corners here. And then we can start adding other sections to it. Right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of these straight pieces to add extra designs. So I'll add a stripe in here. And we'll just tape it at both ends. And then because I'm trying to create a pattern, I'm going to do exactly the same at the other side. So I'll try and find a similar size piece. And I'm going to do the same thing at the other side. So here I've got a little excess piece. I'm just going to trim that off because I don't want that interrupting the pattern. And the same at this side. Just trim it down, remove any unwanted pieces. There we go. Okay, now I can add pieces in between. So I've got some smaller diamonds, which I think I'm going to add in between like this. Just create a piece there. I need a little bit more tape for this. There we go. And then if I use one more diamond, just add one here. Can safely use one there. And I'm just going to trim this tape. Stick it down either side. Okay, so just check your design all over, see if there's any areas that you've missed, any areas where there's sections that need trimming down, any areas where there's tape, and just rectify any issues before you carry on. Here we go. And there's that corner there. Move those two there. And I think I'm pretty happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a piece using that. So I'm going to place my stencil over the top. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to flip my stencil over. And then I'm going to use a sponge. Now you can use a regular dish sponge, or you could use paintbrushes. You could even use pencils, spray paints, anything that you can get your hands on. So for this I'm going to use a mixture of colours. I'm going to stick with the kind of teal theme that I've been going with so far. Teal, greens, blues, slightly oceanic colours. You want to hold your stencil down pretty firm, otherwise the paint will go underneath. This is where a sponge is a real benefit. Paintbrush is far more likely to go underneath. You don't want too much water on it, otherwise it'll just bleed. Use again a mixture of colours. Just keep holding your stencil down wherever you're using your sponge at the time. Try not to let it move about. If you want to, you could always tape it to the table. Sometimes that makes it easier. Okay, just gradually move your hands down, don't make any quick movements or you could end up pulling the stencil with you. You can add little bits of colour back into other areas if you don't feel they're quite right. Okay, until you're happy with it. And then just lift off your stencil really gently and you'll be left with your design. So here's my design, and I could repeat that again and again. I could use it for tiles, for instance, anything I liked. Now the other way of creating a stencil is to create a positive image. So for instance here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my own stencil of a rabbit. So I'll just start off by using my pen to sketch out a rabbit. So it just needs to be a loose image, just the outline, don't worry about any details. Here we go. Create my rabbit design. So there we go. There's a rough sketch of a rabbit. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut my rabbit out with my scissors. Now when you're deciding what image to use, have a think about what colour the animal, creature, item is. You can always use that colour backing paper. So for instance, if I was doing some leaves or vines, I might use a green backing paper. If I was going to do a rabbit, for instance, I might use a lighter backing paper. So I could have a nice little white rabbit. You can always print onto different mediums as well. Try printing on something unusual like pages of a book or an old newspaper. I find it easier just to sometimes just remove some of that excess card so that I can really get into the details. So here it's just that fiddly bit around the feet. Try and keep your stencil as flat as possible. If you need to, you could always place it under a book or something to flatten it back out before using it. So here we go. Here's my rabbit. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to place this rabbit onto a piece of card. So I don't think I need the whole piece of card, so I'm just going to sketch out a quick line across it and cut out a smaller piece. Okay, now I'm just going to place my rabbit onto my card like this, and I'm going to start to colour around it. So for this one, I think I'm just going to have a rabbit in a field, keep it nice and simple. I'll have green for the field below and some blue for the sky above. So again, you can use either a sponge or you can use paintbrushes. I'm going to use a sponge. So just hold your stencil down nice and flat. Again, if you need to have pressed it first, just leave it overnight in between some books. I've got some bits of brown in here as well, in the grass. I'm going to carry on the grass till about midway. Then I think I'm going to change over to some blue. So I'm going to use blue for the top half, just to use for the sky. So I'm just going to give my sponge a tiny little bit of a rinse out. Some of that off it. Then I'm going to use a very pale blue just for the sky. Put a bit of white in there. Use a nice pale blue colour for the sky above my rabbit's head. Okay, and once you're happy with your background, all you need to do is remove your stencil really gently, like that. So now I have a white rabbit on a blue background. Another thing I could use is I could use pre-painted paper. So for instance here, I've pre-painted this paper green. What I'm going to do is I'm going to place my bird on it. I've got a pre-cut shape of a bird, and I'm just going to use some kind of black around it to give kind of a shadow around my bird to create the illusion of the bird being in shadows. Then when I remove my stencil, the colour will show through. So here, I've got a piece with a bird and the colours showing through instead. Okay, so that's a few different ways you can use stencils using only scissors. Just have a go, experiment, see what you can come up with. You can use card, you can use plastic, anything you can come up with or find around your house to make your stencil. Just have a go, and don't forget to share your results with @cartwheelarts and #drawtheday. Or alternatively, you could always email your work to admin@cartwheelarts.org.uk. So thanks for watching, it's been great to see you, and I'll see you again. Bye.